Support for Seattle Now comes from the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association with the Columbia Snake River System, providing clean energy and sustainable commerce as Washington aims for carbon neutrality by 2030. Learn more at pnwa.net/rivervalues.
Hey, it's Patricia Murphy. It's Thursday, and this is Seattle Now. If you're an artist, musician, or dancer in Seattle, 2020 has been brutal. But artists gotta make art, so the community is pivoting and finding new ways of expression. But there's another shift in our artistic landscape. KUOW veteran arts reporter and host Marcie Sillman is leaving public radio. In a minute, Marcie reflects that artists are essential to the fabric of Seattle. But first, let's get you caught up. Republican Congressman Dan Newhouse has tested positive for COVID-19. In a tweet, Newhouse says his symptoms are mild and that he's quarantining at home. The 65-year-old was just elected to his fourth term representing Washington's 4th Congressional District, which covers much of central Washington. Several other members of Congress have tested positive as well in recent days, including Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley. The day named to commemorate the ending of slavery in the U.S. will be one of 2 new paid holidays for King County employees starting in 2022. King County Council approved Juneteenth and Indigenous Peoples Day as paid holidays this week as part of the budget. Council member Reagan Dunn says the county was too strapped to fund the nearly $5 million cost and voted no. The Seattle Seahawks meet division leaders Arizona tonight at 5:20. For Thursday Night Football. The team is currently 6-3. Shortly after that, the NFL is placing all 32 teams in the league in intensive protocol to mitigate the risk of COVID-19. Starting Saturday, there will be mandatory mask wearing, including during practice and in weight rooms, and all meals will be grab and go. Yahoo Sports reports the Hawks haven't had a positive COVID test since the beginning of this pandemic season. The local art scene is struggling due to COVID, so it's bittersweet that KUOW's longtime arts and culture reporter Marcie Sillman is retiring. Marcie's keen reporting in recent years has focused primarily on illuminating underrepresented parts of this city, but her voice as a host has been a familiar part of public radio since 1985. She's reported on key moments in Seattle's cultural history, including the death of Kurt Cobain.
From member station KUOW in Seattle, Marcie Sillman reports.
Seattle music fans began flocking to Cobain's home as soon as they heard that a dead body had been found there. Although police had refused to confirm that it was Cobain, the fans gathered in a steady downpour to mourn the singer.
Marcie is here to share her hopes and anxieties for the future of our city's creative community. Hey, Marcie, great to talk to you.
Hi, Trish. I'm in here wheeling my wheelchair in here as the ancient grandmother that I am.
Stop it. Seriously, though, 35 years. What a time to be heading off to your next adventure. Where do you see our arts community at the moment?
I'm going to quote the head of the Office of Arts and Culture, Randy Engstrom, who says it's balanced on the edge of a knife, because that is really the case right now. There are thousands out of work, and performing arts venues in particular have not been able to have a live audience for what is it now, almost 9-10 months. What I see are 2 promising developments. The first is that after at least a decade, maybe more, of arts organizations trying to figure out how to vie on the digital platform with stuff like Netflix or all the other streaming services and online games, they are finally having to figure it out because they can't have live audiences. So they're rapidly developing some really interesting digital content. And the second is that we didn't just have COVID this year. We had the Black Lives Matter uprising, social justice uprising. And I think that the forced shuttering of all these organizations has given a lot of them time to step back and rethink what real equity means in their organizations.
Marcie, it sounds like there really are opportunities right now to reimagine art and access and representation since we're in this time of restructuring.
I think that that's true, but I think that a lot of the work is happening not in the programming part of an organization, but really behind the scenes. Who has power to make decisions? who's on the boards of these organizations. It's not equitable if the governing board's all white people and occasionally a Black artist is represented or an artist of Asian descent or Latino. So I think the conversation is about what exactly equity is and how far deep into an organization's guts you need to go to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things I remember you talking about after 9/11 and actually after the 2016 election was that there would be really important art created during this time. Are you seeing that show up today?
I'm seeing it specifically this year in a lot of arenas. I mean, let's just talk about the Black Lives Matter murals that went onto the street and now are being preserved in Seattle. We've seen various iterations of that across the country, but I'm particularly interested in the way that the theater and dance communities have responded, really creating work that not only is for one person or maybe two 6 foot apart people, but also work that really addresses our inner despair. And I don't think that's too strong a word to talk about how most of us are feeling right now as COVID is resurgent for the third time, although it never really went away. So seeing a lot of work that is about how we feel.
Yeah, yeah. And, 35 years you've been in this business here in this town, and you were a witness to so much history in this city. In the 90s, you were NPR's grunge scene reporter on the ground, and the music scene was white hot here. I wonder what was special about that time and whether or not it still exists in some form today.
It was a really amazing time because so many people were flooding into Seattle. And by so many, it's like what we see with the influx of Amazon workers, except that these were aspiring artists who had no money and they could live here because a lot of flannel, and it was cheap. There were literally grungy places that you could do your work in. So there were studio spaces, and there was just a sense that anything was possible. There were hard times. There was a lot of heroin use in that community. There was the rape and murder of Mia Zapata, a trial that I covered. So there were a lot of dark sides to this. And I think what's different now, we have the artists. And I recently, a couple of years ago, spoke to a pair of 20-something aspiring musicians who had come to town because that Seattle aura still exists. But this is not the same town. I mean, it's expensive, it's glitzy, it's much harder to really get that barista job and wait till you get your big break with Sub Pop Records.
Yeah, it's hard to be a funky musician in a city like Seattle these days because it's hard to live if you don't have a lot of money. We are a much different city and a much different music scene today. I'm wondering if you're hopeful for the future of our city's creative community. What are the threads that will pull the community forward during this time?
I want to be hopeful because this community is essential to my well-being. I think that I've been most impressed with the ability of our city's artists to pivot to making content and to know that even though the greater society might not see them that way, that they consider themselves to be essential workers. And so I think that we will have art always. The organizations that we see in town have been eviscerated by this pandemic. The big ones that may survive the pandemic will not survive as they were, and it will take probably half a decade for them to come out of the huge financial crevasse that they have fallen into. There's a lot of concern about organizations run by people of color for communities of color. They are really trying to hang in there. They're a little bit more nimble, but they haven't had the kind of capital investment. They don't have endowments. So, there'll be art. How it's presented to us, it'll be something somebody else will be reporting on. Well, maybe somebody else will be.
That's not true.
Yeah, it isn't
That's
true.
That's not true,
it?
Marcie Sillman. Well, I've heard it from your mouth many times. Art is essential, and so is Marcie Sillman to the city of Seattle. This is bittersweet, my friend. It's been a long and lovely career working next to you. I'm going to miss your presence in the newsroom and on our arts beat at KUOW. Our loss is the city's gain, of course, as they say. So thank you for all of your work.
Oh, Patricia, I will miss you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Marcie Sillman is KUOW's outgoing arts and culture reporter. Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. The show is produced by Sophie Reed, Clare McGrane, Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, and Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.
Now you can hear the KUOW news stories you want whenever you want with the KUOW Newsroom podcast.
Washington State's plan to distribute any potential COVID-19 vaccine.
Stay up to date with easy access to trusted in-depth reporting from our award-winning journalists.
Patient rolls up and rolls down his window. After the patient checks in, Nurse Teresa
Pick, skip, or save the stories you care about on demand.
Big change at the top of Bellevue-based T-Mobile.
Visit KUOW.org or search KUOW Newsroom on your podcasting app.